We have reached the end of the line for the Ninja Ryuukenden series. I always found it odd that the game didn't manage to jump to the 16-bit platforms. Admittedly, this third game mainly exists due to the popularity of the series in the US, but you'd think there would be enough Japanese fans to keep the series going. After Ninja Ryuukenden III, there is a Game Boy game later that year, which is actually a sequel to Kage that has been repurposed. And then nothing, until the series gets rebooted in 2004. For all intents and purposes, this is the final game in the series. It's been a technical marvel, it's influenced a lot of people, and it's just going away. The game has a subtitle, Yomi no Hakobune, or Ark of Hell, and that's Ark like Noah's Ark. That refers to an ancient spacecraft that everyone is attempting to obtain through the course of the game. The story actually takes place between the first and second games, and it's set in motion by Ryu apparently attempting to kill Irene, the CIA agent who was also his love interest in the first game. Although I'm playing and talking about the Famicom release here, I have to point out that Ninja Ryuukenden III is one of the most infamous examples of a game being made incredibly difficult for the US release. So much so that I would say it ruins the game. In the US version, enemies do drastically more damage. Things that didn't hurt you in the Famicom version will injure you in the NES version. On the NES, you have to go back to the beginning of the stage when you die, rather than just the area that you died in. The Famicom version offers unlimited continues and a password system. And on the Famicom, continues are much more generous, letting you go to the second parts of acts. So if you got a game over on 3-2 on the Famicom version, you'd go back to the start of 3-2, while on the US version, you go back to 3-1. These measures, implemented to prevent people from beating it as a rental, make the game so unpleasant to play, you really should stick to the Famicom version. As you might expect, Ninja Ryuukenden III doesn't really mix up the formula a whole lot. It's still B to slash, A to jump, you can stick to walls and climb up and down them, and you slash at the floating objects to get energy and weapons that use up that energy. A new addition for this game is that you can see what's inside those objects before you slash them. So if you really want to keep the weapon that you have, you can avoid having it switched out on you. Though to be honest, I found that the weapon placement here was generally exactly what you needed at that moment. You get the fireballs that shoot down right before you reach a section where there are enemies below you, or the fire wheel when you reach a part where you're going to get swarmed. If you go around slashing everything and collecting it, you'll probably have just what you need. Other returning weapons include the fireballs that shoot upward, and the shuriken that orbits your body. Those shuriken now act as a default weapon, so you'll always have it when you start out. A new weapon that's been added is a shot that goes straight up and down from you, and then rebounds a few times. This is especially useful with the new mechanic where you hang from some platforms. You can jump up through these platforms, but if there's enemies up there, that might not be the best idea. And while hanging, hitting B uses the special attack. Apparently you can't swing your sword with one hand. This is Ryu Hayabusa, not Strider Hiryu. Although this Ryu can pick up a sword upgrade that makes his swing very similar to Strider. The other collectibles to keep an eye out for are scrolls that will permanently increase your maximum energy, potions that will restore a bit of your health, and the always useful 1-ups. I found the controls in Ninja Ryuukenden III to be a bit stiff. Part of that is that Ryu no longer turns on a dime. If you press in the opposite direction to where he's facing and hit jump, he does a stiff little backwards hop. Similarly, it felt to me like there were a few frames after I hit the A button before he jumped. And before you mention television delay, I am playing on a CRT with no upscaling. The stage environmental gimmicks that Tecmo was so fond of in the second game have returned for Ninja Ryuukenden III, though they don't seem to be as extreme. Like in this area, you can sink down into the ground, and some of the surfaces aren't real, but it's not that difficult. And here, where you're standing in flowing water, it's pushing you, but not nearly as strongly as it did in the second game. I can't say I'm as fond of the environment in Ninja Ryuukenden 3, though. There's not much in the way of natural locations. So much of the game seems to be variations on Evil Laboratory. While the reception to this game in Japan was generally positive, I did see one complaint reoccurring that I felt was a bit odd. They felt it was too easy. And yes, it is much easier than the first two games. This was my first time playing in a while, and I got up to the final area. And while the bosses sometimes have gimmicks, they're also not very difficult. They have patterns that are very easy to learn, and once you have those down, a bit of patience will guarantee a victory for you, assuming you don't run out of time. But I don't think it's a bad thing to be easier. The original Ninja Ryukenden is remembered as a game that kicks you in the teeth over and over again. It was okay to walk back a bit from that. Maybe they took it a bit too far here, but these days I prefer them erring on the side of too easy rather than too hard. Of course, I'm a game collector who only paid about 1,200 yen for this, not a kid who saved up 6,200 yen and beat it in a few hours. Still, I think Ninja Ryukenden 3 is the most enjoyable of the three on the Famicom. I'll play one if I want to challenge myself, but if I just want to chill out and slash some guys, this is the one to go for.